Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the Paranormal Comedy Cocktail Hour of Sports. This is episode 3, if you're playing along at home, scoring along at home. And one of the things I realized I did not do last week was talk about, comedy or sports or any of the other things I wanted to talk about that I like to talk about on this show. I exclusively, pretty much, took your questions, and they were all, of course, ghost story related, sharing your paranormal experiences and answering your questions, which I love to do. However, the show is supposed to be all of these bizarre, crazy, random topics, so today I will kind of go back the other direction. Now, of course, I will talk ghost stories, which I will do every episode. And if that's all you're interested in, which is at least 9 out of 10 of you, that's why you're listening to me talk. It's because you're hoping to hear a good, interesting ghost story. I will always put those on YouTube, so you don't have to actually listen to the hour long. I'll just post those highlights to YouTube. So this portion right now, I'm just going to put the entire beginning of this episode onto YouTube. Because this is all talk ghosts right off the bat, and then get into the other stuff. Now to briefly go over the other stuff, that category, I do have weekly features. We have a song of the week. This is going to be the nerdiest one ever, which I'm very excited about because I got to go to E3, or at least an E3 function this year, which is the Next Generation Electronics Expo. It's all gaming and all things wonderful and nerdy. And this is, of course, an exciting time if you're a gamer, if you're an electronic gamer, if you will, because the new Xbox, we're starting to get the information about that, and as well as PlayStation 4. And I will weigh in on my thoughts on those because I know you care so deeply about what I have to say about that. I also talk comedy. Our comic for this show that I'll highlight is the great Patty Vasquez. I've known her for quite a long time, and she is just an exceptional comic. I'll get into more into who she is and why you should care about who she is a bit later. I'll have a game of the week, of course. This week it will be From Dust, and a great video game that's on Xbox as well as it's a PC download. And actually now it's available on Google Chrome. You can just play it online. And, of course, I have to give a little... I'm not going to talk too deeply about it. I'm not really... I can't fake it and act like I'm a huge hockey guy. Gotta love those Blackhawks. Hometown team won the Stanley Cup yesterday with the most exciting 2 minutes in hockey I've probably ever seen. Just an incredible final 2 minutes of that game. Just unbelievable. What a way to win it. But I'll chat a little bit of sports later, but that is what this show is, week in, week out. We have ghosts, we have sports, we have gaming. Usually I'll be talking tabletop gaming, actually, but with you got to give some credit to video games, because that is just an incredible media. That is an incredible way to tell stories. Oh, yes, big for the four people or so that listen. I've decided to start a new weekly installment, which is how I got to be where I am today from the Hollywood sense, not from the ghost investigator, researcher, author sense, but not at all that I'm a big name, not at all that I have this amazing biography, but people do ask me how I did get to where I am today, and I'm going to actually do a chapter a week, and I'm going to start from basically the very beginning, which is, that's what you need to know. You don't need to know how I got onto working on Lost or The Dark Knight, or how I got to be a cinematographer on an HBO movie, or the cool things, the cool, big, exciting things. Obviously, I'll get to those, and people will, I'm sure, be interested in how all that went down. But you really need to know where it all started, because people coming to me are people that are just getting started. It doesn't matter about age. This industry, it really is pretty colorblind. It's pretty blind to any aspects of who you are. It just matters what your personality is. If you're a go-getter, if you're a hard worker and an honest worker, and but still you have to be in the right place at the right time. Not to say that I have a blueprint, but I'll tell you guys how I did it, and hopefully I can impart some words of wisdom that help you guys out, and maybe we'll be able to make movies together someday. But in the meantime, I'm going to start off with my plug of the week, which is not, if any YouTube click-through people are listening, this is not a paid advertisement, but this is the ghosty section of this episode. And my plug of the week is the Chicago Ghost Conference. I talked about this a few weeks ago in passing, and I am very excited to be part of this again. This will take place the first weekend in October in Chicago, obviously. Otherwise, it'd be some misleading naming. But the lineup that Ursula Bielski has for this event is absolutely, without question, the best I've ever been involved with myself. Ursula, for any of you who don't know, is the first lady of hauntings when it comes to Chicago. She wrote the first book, and she did it from a very amazingly historically accurate and sound background. She is a historian, she's a journalist in the purest senses of those words, and she went and she told the ghost stories of Chicago and wrote this incredible book called Voices... hey, that's my book. She wrote this incredible book called Chicago Haunts. Voices from the Chicago Grave is my book. I'll just finish that thought. Not that I was trying to hijack the thing, but the little plug here, but clearly I did. Anyway, she wrote Chicago Haunts, which came out in 1997, and that was the first book I ever bought to do my initial research. And that's how I got started. I picked up her book, and I couldn't stop. I was just absolutely addicted. I knew that I couldn't just read this book. I knew I had to pursue it more. Her writing was so amazing, and the stories she had were just so sound. And not only just good stories, but backed up historically. She is really the most respected name in Chicago ghost stories, but and really one of the top echelon of paranormal writers, investigators. Again, the lineup of talent she has on board here, I am happy to say that I've been bumped off the regular speaker panel because the caliber has gotten so high. Headlining the event is Josh Gates, who I can't tell you how excited I am to meet this guy, just to even be in the same room as him. He is Mr. Charisma. Actually, a lot of these speakers that she has are just amazingly entertaining public speakers. But Josh Gates, you probably know him from Destination Truth, which is actually my very favorite TV show of this genre. This kind of undefined genre of the paranormal, not just investigation shows, although this is an investigation show. His show is just about travel, really. They go to these amazingly exotic places. Have I used enough adverbs yet? I feel like the ly is coming out a lot. They go to these incredible places all around the world, very difficult to reach locations to find local folklore and traditions, stories, and they go and try to find out if these stories have any merit to them. So they do get into ghost stories quite a bit. Generally speaking, every 1 hour episode of Destination Truth is one half ghost story, one half cryptozoology. Although they do some really wild things too, where they actually have looked for aliens in a couple of episodes, and those have ended up being some of my favorite episodes. The beauty of this show is it doesn't matter if they get good evidence or not. The whole adventure and getting to these places and looking around and the interaction between Josh and his cohorts is so entertaining that they can go out and bust and find nothing interesting, and maybe even just flat out say, like, oh no, you're not seeing a wolf man, you're seeing this bizarre kind of dog that's indigenous to this area but kind of skittish. And you still enjoy the show. You don't feel like you wasted the half hour watching them hunt down a dog in the weeds, which ultimately does happen from time to time. It's still a rewarding experience for the viewer. So Josh Gates will be the headline speaker. I'm just going through the list here. ChicagoHauntings.com/conference.html is where you can find this information from Ursula's website, which is obviously just ChicagoHauntings.com. Going down the list, continue, we have John Zaffis. He is a demonologist, and he's the host of the TV show Haunted Collector. Now, I haven't seen this show, but the concept of collecting objects that might have some energy or an entity attached to them is a concept I had, and of course they've already made a show of it, and John Zaffis is the host. And the fact that he's a demonologist is fascinating to me too. This is something that you hear about more and more today, probably honestly because it's more exciting on TV to say we've encountered a demon than we've encountered a ghost. Now, I have very little knowledge at all in the world of demonology, so I'm excited to attend the event just to hear him speak about demonology, try to separate fact versus fiction, and how much of that is legit or not. Again, I know very little. I know as much as I've seen on the Ghost Adventures, which I never feel is a very informed when Zach is talking about demonology. I don't know his background in demonology. I'd like to know a little bit more, that I'm hearing it from an actual authority rather than just somebody else that's heard a thing and is regurgitating it. This is the source. So excited to hear from him. This is just kind of bizarre. So there's this guy Chris, whose last name I have a tough time with, Quarantino, I think it is. He is the son of Kathy Lutz, who, of course, the Lutzes, the name might ring a bell. They are the family involved in the Amityville horror story. So I'm very curious to hear what he has to say about it. He wrote a book called Return to Amityville. We'll be able to hear from an actual Amityville horror survivor. That's going to be nuts. This lineup is already... We're 3 dudes deep, and there's a long list. I'll maybe hurry it up a little bit. I'll see what I can do. Stephen Brody, he is a renowned parapsychologist and philosopher. I do love bringing in what is reality, just different viewpoints, getting away from the science of it. Obviously, the science is important, and we use that to try to validate claims, which is, we do that ultimately for skeptics. We're not even doing that for us, I feel, in a lot of ways, us being the greater investigation community. I think there's some element of hunting, I mean literally ghost hunting, and the picture that you can put up, or the video you can put up on your YouTube account, is almost like the deer head over the mantle. But in a big way, the fact that we're gathering evidence is really just to kind of prove ourselves to skeptics, which ultimately is that the best reason to be doing it. So it's going to be interesting to see what Stephen Brody has to say. And he's written the book, Taking Physical Mediumship Seriously. Haven't read it. Sounds interesting. I don't know what physical you'd think could be metaphysical or psychic mediumship. But anyway, let's take it seriously, whatever it is. The next guy on this list is one of my favorites, Jeff Bellinger. He is the head researcher for Ghost Adventures, and he does an amazing job. I know he's a really gifted, fun public speaker. Watching this guy, as well as his buddy Dave Schrader, who's about to come up on this list, watching either of them is like watching a stand-up comic talk about the paranormal. And in addition to being the lead researcher for Ghost Adventures, now I did say Destination Truth is my #1 show in this world. Ghost Adventures is #2. I actually do like this show quite a bit, and the more you see the show, the more you enjoy laughing at the guys as they scare the hell out of each other and themselves in these bizarre places. But ultimately, you do see as well that these guys actually do take it very seriously. As much as the Ghost Adventures crew comes off, let's say, douchey because of the tight shirts and bizarre mustaches and sunglasses and whatever bizarre fashion sense our lead investigator has, which really does come off poorly in a million different ways. He has a legitimate interest in it, and he actually does take it very seriously. Jeff himself is a big-time researcher, probably one of the head researchers into the Lizzie Borden axe murder case, and of course the paranormal phenomena associated with that. In addition to that, he is the host of a syndicated public access TV show called 30 Odd Minutes, which is, it highlights his really fun demeanor and the lighthearted approach he takes to this sometimes very dark world. So it's refreshing to see Jeff do these interviews with people that are sometimes super serious, and he keeps it light and fun and entertaining. And of course, I already just brought up Dave Schrader. He tends to be Jeff's partner in crime a lot. He is the host of Darkness Radio, terrestrial radio show coming out of Minnesota, but of course that show gets podcasted and gets really high ratings in the podcast world. Again, few people are as funny as either of these guys when it comes to the paranormal world. The headliner from the 3rd Chicago Ghost Conference is Christopher Fleming. He's coming back this year. He gave an amazing talk last year about growing up with psychic abilities, being the son, actually, of a Chicago Blackhawk from the 1960s, I want to say. You know him from TV shows like Dead Famous and Psychic Kids. He's made guest appearances on a ton of other shows, including, I watched an old episode of Ghost Hunters recently that he made a little cameo appearance on. But yeah, Chris Fleming, who is a big draw, he will be back. Another guy from Darkness Radio is Tim Dennis. He'll be making an appearance. Michael Esposito, really a pioneer when it comes to EVP. You see a certain handful, maybe a dozen or so different bits of instrumentation on these paranormal television shows. Obviously, you got your EMF devices, your EVP recorders, so on and so on. But there's a lot more experimental work out there. And once it gets through the training grounds, then maybe we'll start to see it filter into popular culture. Which, again, Ghost Adventures, that's one of my favorite things about that show, is you almost feel like Q from James Bond is on. And every so often he opens a new suitcase and there's another interesting gadget. Well, Michael Esposito is not relating to that show, but just in general, he is one of these guys that is coming up with new concepts and testing out new ideas and pieces of instrumentation. Lastly, for our presenters, we have Larry Arnold. I love this that we're not just talking ghosts here. This is a guy who is a lead researcher in the bizarre world of spontaneous human combustion. And he wrote the book, Ablaze! The Mysterious Fires of SHC. SHC, of course, is spontaneous human combustion. I love having somebody like him on the panel, on the overall lineup, because it's something very different than everything else we're seeing. Dave Schrader, Jeff Bellinger, these guys can talk about all sorts of different aspects of I don't know, the paranormal. I mean, Dave regularly talks UFOs on his show. 2 years ago, he talked about shadow people, which was really, really eye-opening to hear what he had to say about that. Gee, Scott, where the hell do you fit in all of this? I am very excited to be on the Chicago Roundtable. There's so many actually big names on here that I can't even at all... Really, I feel honored to be on this list, but I'll read through the names. Obviously, Ursula Bielski is making an appearance here. I'd love it if she had her own couple of hours to speak, but as you see, there's a lot of great, talented people appearing at this, so we'll take her there. Dale Kazmarak is also appearing on this round table. He is one of the, again, he's probably the first big-name researcher, investigator. He is a science guy. He's an instrument guy. He really started out as being Chicago's original Ghostbuster in a lot of ways. Dan Malone, a very dear friend of mine. He and his friend Buzz Freeman, who they will both be on this panel. They will both be there talking. I interviewed them a lot for my books about Robinson Woods Indian Burial Ground, and I'm really floored that they went from being people I interviewed a decade ago, I mean really honestly a decade ago, more than a decade ago, to now being on this panel with me. That's so cool. Jim Graczyk, who is another local investigator. I only met him once very briefly, don't know enough about him. Honestly, don't know anything about Adam Seltzer or Scott Cashman, so shame on me, but I'll still say their names. Mary Marshall, a dear friend of mine. I love this woman. I adore her. She was a co-host of mine on the Mothership Connection for the last year or so that it was on. Not that I was on for that whole time, but she and I did a handful of investigations last October together. She is an absolute sweetheart. She was our advertiser of the week last week. And I just can't say enough great things about her. And I'll be appearing on her show on July 2nd that evening. So mark it in your calendars. I'll get you a bit more information later tonight. And finally, Sam Moranto. Sam is a guy that I got the opportunity of interviewing on the Mothership Connection years ago now, at least 4 or 5 years ago. He is a member of MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network. I think that's all that stands for. But he is based out of Chicago, and he's done investigations into the big UFO sighting at O'Hare, as well as the Tinley Park sightings. The Tinley Park sightings, I really don't know why they get so separated from the very famous Phoenix Lights. Obviously, the Phoenix Lights stayed around a long time, and you guys should all look that up, of course, if you don't know what I'm talking about. But you'll see plenty of videos of very well and highly documented UFO sighting across Phoenix, Arizona. And this whole shindig is being held at the Irish American Heritage Center, at the historic Irish American Heritage Center. What's historic about it, I don't know, but it is, the location's great, actually. It's right about where 90 and 94 split or merge, I guess, depending on which direction you're going. So if you are flying in, it's actually just like a 15-minute drive from the airport. Now you can hop on the L, get your whole Taste of Chicago thing going on. From O'Hare. That's actually, it's a great location. It used to be held at the Portage Theater, which as far as visually cool, an old theater is an awesome location. Parking-wise, it was kind of tough. Neighborhood was fine, but nothing noteworthy at all. I don't know if this venue offers as much seating as the last one did, so definitely buy your tickets early. I do have a feeling this will sell out. And then come say hi. Say that you've listened. Say that you are the one listener of this podcast, and I'll give you. You know what? Drop me a note right away that you heard it, and you will come out to it, and I will definitely arrange for a book to you. This is cool. I'm doing the whole Google Street View, which I am addicted to. It looks like it was an old high school or something. This place looks spooky, man. This, if it wasn't in the middle of a neighborhood, honestly, there's a classic Chicago bungalow right across the street. But if it wasn't in the middle of a neighborhood, I would say Josh Gates should do an episode of Stranded at this place. This is just this gothic, massive, old school-looking building. I can't wait to walk around this place, half in the bag, with a bunch of other nuts looking for ghosts. I don't care if this place is haunted or not. We're going to find a ghost. We're gonna scare the pants out of ourselves somehow. This is the Cocktail Hour, people, if you didn't catch that at the beginning of the show. I've got about 40 minutes. I'm going to talk about games next, and I'm going to talk about, again, some sports at the end. I guess this is mostly going to be about games, which is exciting that I get to be as nerdy as I want to be right now.